Good morning, everyone, and welcome to day 2 and the 4th session of the Building Healthy, Strong Communities Conference, From Burnout to Bliss, a radical self-care workshop for social workers. Before we begin, I just want to go over a few housekeeping notes. If you wish to receive CEs for today's webinar, you will need to stay for the duration of the time and respond to all the poll questions you see pop up throughout the presentation. You will see the first one momentarily. There will be time for Q&A at the end of the event, so please submit any questions you have in the Q&A box or the chat. We do encourage participation in the chat throughout today's presentation. We're going to wait just a few moments before we begin, so sit tight and remember to respond to the polls when you see them. I'm going to launch your first poll. Just asking who is in attendance today. And please feel free to elaborate on your answer in the chat. We always love to see who's with us if you're an alum, letting us know when you graduated. In some of the sessions yesterday, there were some folks reconnecting, and that's always fun to see. And if you do not align with one of those answers that's posted, again, feel free to put your answer in the chat. Still have some people rolling in. So if you're just joining us, we're responding to poll 1, just asking who is in attendance today. And a reminder, if you are just joining us and you're interested in getting your CE hours, you do need to stay for the full time and respond to all the poll questions. Give you all about another 30 seconds to respond to this first one. And throughout the presentation today, if the poll function doesn't work for you or if it ends before you're able to respond, your answer can always go in the chat. Give you all about another 10 seconds. All right, we're going to go ahead and end this poll and share it so Sade can see who's listening in today. And as always, it looks like we have a lot of alum with us. So welcome, everyone. We're excited to have you here. And I am now going to pass things on to Jan Fisher, who is also an alum of the School of Social Work and a member of our alumni board and the Professional Development Committee who helped plan today's conference. So Jan, I pass it over to you.
Good morning. Sade Richardson is uniquely qualified to present this workshop. During her early career at Wolverine Wellness, she created Self-Love for Activists, a toolkit that uses evidence-based practices to bolster resilience and belonging. This toolkit is widely used in wellness coaching, the wellness course, and throughout the University of Michigan student life. Sade is currently the Director of Strategic Initiatives in the Office of Public Health Practice at the University of Michigan School of Public Health. She holds both an MPH in Health Behavior and Education and an MSW in Management of Human Services from the University of Michigan. She is now pursuing a doctorate in social work at the University of Louisville. Welcome, Sade.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to share my screen. All right, so let's get started. So my name is Sade. I thank Jan for that wonderful introduction. I want to preface, by no means am I an expert in this area. I'm always learning and growing myself. And I know all of you have different things that you're doing, so hopefully you'll share some of that within the chat as we go through the presentation, and hopefully there's something new you can take away. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk a little bit about self-care and burnout, some different self-care models, some tools for practicing self-care. We're going to talk a little bit about like work-life balance and harmony. We're going to talk about some resources to get you started or re-energized on your self-care journey, and we'll have time for Q&A. So our first poll question, what are some messages that you have received about self-care?
So this is also our first time using the short answer, and it doesn't look like they're going to show for us. So if you also want to put your answer in the chat for other folks to see your answer, please do so.
Yeah, I'm seeing some coming through the chat. It's selfish, necessary, but not always easy to do. It's my responsibility and can fix anything. At the school of social work, I learned that it was important, but then in the real world, it's hard to do when you're earning hours towards your licensure. That's true. I need it desperately. Be happy. It's important. Yep, those are some things, but do it on your own time. Also, I really like the reframe I heard yesterday that it should be preventative, not recuperative. Yep. It's vital for my health, physical, mental, and spiritual, essential for avoiding burnout and all of these. Yeah. Thanks for sharing those in the chat. The next thing that I want to ask you all before we get into the session is, what has self-care looked like for you since the COVID-19 pandemic?
And same as before, if you can put your answer in the poll and in the chat. Totally up to you if you put it in the chat to be shared with others, but please do put it in the poll.
Okay. A silent cup of coffee in the morning, riding my mountain bike, yoga, therapy, family, reading, good food, exercise and self-reflection, leaving my healthcare job. Yep, that's also a form of self-care. Exercising and meditating. Self-care changed for me since COVID, since I have an immune deficiency. Yep, COVID had a major impact on all of us. We're still feeling the impact of it. Exercise, intentional with lots of boundaries. Yep. Changed my job 3 times, going for a walk. Lots of things are coming through. Drinking more water and walking. For some, it's now almost non-existent. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about self-care. So self-care is really provided for you and by you, right? So it's about taking those time to do some activities or things that nurture you or feed your spirit. And it's really an essential aspect of social work practice. Social workers were often working with individuals and communities who are experiencing trauma or stress or other perhaps mental health challenges. And that can take a toll on our own well-being and lead to burnout. So in order for us to be effective as social workers, we need to maintain our own emotional and mental health. And we also need to prioritize self-care. And I know in the chat, someone mentioned it's hard to prioritize. So we'll talk a little bit about ways we can do that. So self-care, there are many dimensions that people talk about. And this wheel that's up here is one of the more common wheels that people use with self-care. There are some dimensions that you could also add that are not on here, like environmental self-care. So thinking about how your physical surroundings impact your well-being, financial self-care, thinking about how your finances contribute to your overall quality of life. So like financial habits, budgeting, saving, intellectual self-care, so nurturing your intellectual needs. That can include things like reading, learning new things, pursuing creative interests, or engaging in critical thinking. Cultural self-care, so embracing and honoring your cultural identity and heritage. And for me, that looks like going home. I'm originally from Trinidad, so I try to go back home in December and engage with my family and really tap in and stay tuned in with the culture that I grew up in. Social self-care, so connecting with your family members and friends and community and sort of seeking support. And I saw some of that in the chat as well. But why does self-care really matter? So there was a study back in 2006 by Siebert that basically said for social workers, we have a lifetime burnout rate of about 75%. And more recently, they sampled 181 social workers during the first wave of the COVID-19 pandemic. So this is from 2021. And they found that about 26% met the diagnostic criteria for PTSD, 63% reported an average burnout rate, 16% reported severe grief symptoms, and about 49% reported average secondary trauma. Also, individuals employed in social services contexts were at an increased risk of vicarious trauma or secondary trauma and stress, compassion fatigue, trauma-related stress, and professional burnout. So when thinking about these things, the outcomes of stress and trauma, and thinking about why self-care matters, we really need to consider burnout, compassion fatigue, and vicarious trauma or secondary trauma, which are really interrelated concepts. So burnout, which I feel like has been sort of a buzzword during the pandemic too, everybody's been talking about it. It's this sort of state of emotional, mental, and physical exhaustion that results from your chronic work-related stress. So burnout can look like fatigue, irritability, decreased productivity. Perhaps it may be hard to focus. You're sort of detached and are thinking of perhaps leaving your job. Then you think of compassion fatigue. So that's the emotional and physical exhaustion experienced by individuals who are repeatedly exposed to suffering and trauma of others. And that can look like also emotional exhaustion, reduced empathy, increased irritability, and a decreased sense of personal accomplishment. And then thinking of vicarious trauma, that refers to the emotional and psychological impact experienced by individuals who are witnessing or indirectly hearing about traumatic events. And that can, excuse me, and the symptoms that look like intrusive thoughts, could be nightmares, hypervigilance, or high emotional arousal. And these concepts highlight the continuous exposure to sort of stress and suffering and trauma that can happen for us as individuals who are in helping professions, right? So it's essential for us in these roles to prioritize self-care and establish some sort of routine where we have healthy boundaries, where we can seek support, where we can engage in practices that promote our own well-being to sort of prevent or mitigate the effects of these. So self-care is really essential for maintaining your overall well-being and preventing your burnout. It helps you manage your stress. It helps build resilience. It helps you to have better coping when there are challenges or adversity. Engaging in self-care activities also enhances your productivity. It increases your focus. It can help create healthy work-life boundaries. It ensures that individuals have time to relax and also have meaningful relationships. And prioritizing self-care demonstrates that, you have some sort of self-worth or connection with making sure that you show up as your best self every day, right? Not just for the people that you're working with or your different relationships, but also really just for you. By taking care of our own needs, we're better equipped to care and support for others, whether that's in our personal relationships or professional lives. And it's really a proactive approach to maintaining our mental health and preventing the onset of worsening conditions. It fosters better self-awareness and self-reflection, and it allows for individuals to identify and address their own needs and emotions. And investing in self-care, honestly, is a long-term investment in our overall well-being, happiness, and quality of life. For me, I've found when days where I don't prioritize my self-care or don't think about my boundaries or think about my emotions are a lot harder for me to work through and process. So it's really taking it day by day, step by step as we work through it. So we also have ethical obligations, right? So we have our NASW Code of Ethics. And within the Code of Ethics, it basically tells us that we should not allow our personal problems, psychological distress, legal problems, etc., to interfere with our professional judgment. It also tells us that we should immediately seek consultation and take appropriate remediation if we do have things that are causing burnout, stress, things like that. So if perhaps you need adjustments with your workload, or perhaps you need to take a step back, I know a lot of people in the chat said they left their jobs. That's a great way to care for yourself and transition, and taking any other necessary steps to protect our clients and others. In addition, the International Federation of Social Workers, also within their ethical principles, say that social workers have a duty to take the necessary steps to care for themselves professionally and personally in the workplace and in their private lives and in society. So self-care should be done before, during, and after we go out in the world and contribute our magic to it. I really like this quote because I think it shows the importance of hey, you really need to prioritize this. You really need to think about it, how it shows up in the work, how it does not show up in your spaces. I always tell myself, okay, if I'm doing something and I'm noticing I'm sacrificing something else, is that really a priority for me? Is that something where I want to spend my time or energy? All right, so I went in the literature and found some models or frameworks that you can consider in how you approach your self-care. So the first model is the ABCs of self-care. So with this one, it's about awareness. So self-care starts with self-awareness, taking the time to connect with yourself and identify your needs, your emotions and boundaries, paying attention to what your mind and body are telling you, and being mindful of any signs of stress or burnout. The next aspect is balance. And balance is about striving in your life to prioritize different areas of well-being, such as physical, emotional, mental, and social aspects, allocating time and energy to activities that nourish you and helps you maintain some sense of equilibrium, and connection. So cultivating meaningful relationships with others, nurturing your relationships with your loved ones, your colleagues, your friends, and making time for those social activities that engage in open communication or being able to seek support when needed. And this is sort of a simplified model. I'm not a big fan of the word balance, and we'll get into that a little bit later, but I wanted to show different ways that you can think about your self-care and what will work best for you, because everyone is different. Another model is called IMPACT. And IMPACT is an acronym that stands for Invest in Me, Prioritize, Act, and Assess, Connect, and Thrive. And it's a conceptual framework for practicing self-care and fostering personal growth. And this framework, as well as the other two I'm going to talk about, was designed for social workers and by a social worker. And this one focuses primarily on social workers who are working community practices, so including community activists or community organizers and community engaged scholars. And each component has a certain aspect. So it starts with investing in me. That is about emphasizing the importance of prioritizing yourself and investing in your own well-being. It involves recognizing that self-care is not selfish, but rather a necessary foundation for your overall health and resilience. And that involves setting aside time and resources to take care of yourself physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, or any other dimensions we've mentioned so far. The next part of it is prioritization, and that involves identifying what your needs, values, and goals are, and then making conscious choices to allocate your time, energy, and resources to those goals. So it's about recognizing that you essentially have the power to decide what matters most for you and align your actions with those priorities. Really setting clear boundaries and making intentional choices helps us create healthier and more fulfilling lives. Next is to act and assess. So that's taking action in a crucial step in self-care that involves engaging activities and practices that support your well-being. So that includes things like exercise, mindfulness, journaling, some of the things that were mentioned in the chat, or even perhaps engaging in a hobby. Like during the pandemic, like most people, I think, I picked up baking. So I started baking everything like bread, brownies, cookies, all these different things. That was sort of my coping mechanism during the pandemic. And that involves regularly assessing the practices to determine if they're effective and making adjustments. So when I went back out to in-person work, I'm in a hybrid schedule, but now I'm back in person. Baking as my self-care, I don't have as much time to do it. So I've shifted into other things that I enjoy, right? That doesn't mean I don't bake, but I don't have as much time. So making sure you think about what's effective for you at the time and what you need and making those adjustments and reflecting on how the activities make you feel and evaluating whether they align with your needs or values at that time. The next is connection, and that's about fostering your meaningful relationships and social support networks. So building and maintaining connections with your loved ones, your colleagues, your communities, and whatever other spaces that may look like for you. Cultivating positive relationships can contribute to a greater sense of well-being, and prioritizing quality time with others and engaging activities that promote connection and social interaction. Research has shown that this has a great impact on your overall health. The final part is to thrive, and that is about thriving and flourishing in all areas of your life, which as a social worker myself, I find that challenging sometimes, and we'll talk about that a little bit. And emphasizing the importance of nurturing your personal growth, pursuing your passions and interests, and finding a sense of purpose and fulfillment. And thriving is about continuously seeking opportunities for learning, development, and self-improvement. And it means embracing the challenges or goals that you have and striving to really reach your full potential. By incorporating perhaps the impact framework, if this is one that's resonating with you in your life, you can cultivate a holistic approach to self-care and personal growth. And it reminds you to invest in yourself and prioritize what matters most to you, as well as take intentional action, fosters connections, and strive to have a fulfilled life with well-being. The next model is about Black feminist self-care practices. And these are based on Audre Lorde's radical pioneering principles. So if you don't know who Audre Lorde is, I suggest you look her up. Lorde's work emphasized the importance of centering the experience and voices of Black women and recognizing the intersection of race, gender, and other social identities. Nyack, who is a social worker, also highlighted that Black feminism was born out of being sick and tired of being sick and tired of intersectional racism in order to challenge and transform such intersectional racism. So the three principles here, or the first one is choosing areas where your energy is most effective. And for women of color in social work, it's more effective when it's directed towards Black feminist self-care. So we should be directing our energies towards defining and redefining ourselves. NIAC highlights that coming together and seeking communities to share and learn from each other is an effective way to use our energies. The second principle is about the transformation of silence into language and action. And the key idea here is that your silence will not protect you. The spectrum of silence includes, but is not only limited to only speaking when invited, diluting the power and passion of the message, and waiting for and never getting to speak. So breaking silence is sort of life affirming. And when silence is transformed into language and action, it's a process of self-determination, self-definition, and agency is activated. It helps build connection with others and strengthen resilience. And I found for me, especially with Principle 2, oftentimes, like when I walk into spaces, I'm the only Black person in that space. So I've been making a concerted effort to speak up and make sure that my voice is heard or represented in these spaces. And it's helped me a lot instead of like internalizing a lot of it. It's helped to get it out and like name certain things in certain situations. The third principle is about learning to love the power of our feelings. So our feelings have revolutionary potential. They're rooted in self-care, and we must learn to channel and love our feelings so that it can be used to promote the kind of spaces we would like to see. And this is something I'm learning for myself as well in terms of my feelings and how to be able to express them. Because I think oftentimes in professional spaces especially, we're taught to not share emotions, right? So we're kind of reclaiming that with these principles. The last one that I'm going to talk about is radical self-care. And this one was more so written in terms of the global climate crisis that we're experiencing and living through. And radical self-care acknowledges the connection between human well-being and the well-being of the natural world. So Powers and Engstrom, who are both social work faculty members, focus on the importance of radical self-care for social workers in the face of this global climate crisis, as perhaps we see environmental degradation, we see climate change, global warming, and a lot of environmental justices that are affecting individuals and communities every day. And for them, they highlighted these three key areas for radical self-care. So the first is seeing activism as self-care, because social work is inherently political, right? And it's rooted in political activism, and challenging social work injustices is a form of radical self-care through activism that can help social workers deal with the stressors that they face, particularly in the context of the global climate crisis. They also recommend things like social media activism and being connected to what's happening out there, but also thinking back a little bit of sometimes it can be information overload. So finding the boundary to sort of prevent burnout within there is sort of a delicate balance within that. And to combat that overstimulation with technology, they talk about using self-care strategies such as in setting intentional boundaries, creating social media safe spaces that foster a sense of solidarity, community, and empowerment that support activists rather than being combative environments. So I'm a part of many different Facebook group or communities for social workers that are a safe space to be able to talk and engage at different topics, to laugh about things, and to really build each other up. And I found that to be helpful. The next is organizational membership. So the idea is that increased involvement with professional social work organizations and advocacy networks, they offer personal and professional benefits. So organizations can provide an opportunity for learning, for professional solidarity and advocacy, for the recognition and rights of social workers. So membership in professional organizations allow you to participate in advocacy and contribute to your radical self-care by fostering a sense of shared commitment and providing networking opportunities. So that's things like joining the Association of Black Social Workers or joining the National Association of Social Workers, or I'm a member of the American Public Health Association, and sort of finding community in that way to work towards shared goals. The last piece was ecologically conscious strategies. And this emphasizes the importance of nurturing the connection between humans and the natural world for the well-being of both. And they talked about this in two different areas. So the first was sort of ecotherapy. And that was sort of an umbrella for interventions that have an ecological or nature-based focus. So activities like outdoor therapy sessions, ecological drama therapy, wilderness work can help individuals reconnect with nature and promote healing and support mental health. Ecotherapeutic self-care can be tailored to your individual interests, so like moving fitness routines outside, or perhaps starting a garden or volunteering to work with animals. And spending time in nature has been found to have various benefits, including relieving symptoms of anxiety or depression. And ecotherapeutic practices, they say, can take place indoors or outdoors, but it just involves incorporating natural elements into your environment and practicing mindfulness and asking yourself ecologically conscious questions. The second aspect was a sustainable life enhancing PACE model, and that focuses on mindfully using your resources, your time, and choices to create a sustainable and fulfilling lifestyle. So this is about the importance of spending time to mindfully examine how things are interrelated in the different facets of your life and creating an individualized plan. So it involves prioritizing your self-care, gratitude, mindfulness, preventative care, reconnecting with nature, and setting boundaries. So I shared 4 different sort of models for self-care, and that leads to the next poll definition. Poll question, sorry, not definition. Which model perhaps do you resonate with the most? And while people answer, I'm now able to look at the chat. I see people are talking about like adventure therapy and recommending forest therapy is really healing. Okay, so I see a wide variety, quite a few, 29% with the ABC model, 34% with the impact model, 14% with Black feminist self-care practices, 22% radical self-care. And I wanted to do this because I wanted to show that self-care is not a one-size-fits-all approach. Maybe there are parts of each different model that you want to take and adapt to make your own. That's okay too. But these are supposed to be frameworks to start you thinking about your self-care and how you integrate it and what really matters to you. And it definitely was hard to pick one. I actually picked little bits of each. And I really like quotes, so there'll be quotes throughout, but remember that nourishing yourself in a way that helps you blossom in the direction you want to go is attainable, and you are worth that effort. So we talked about the models, we talked a little bit about the definition. Let's talk about some things to help you with practicing self-care. All right. So before we get into specific tips, my next Zoom poll is work-life balance attainable? So 76% say yes, 24% say no. Okay. So I'm gonna show a video and talk about it a little bit. So on here you see that I say work-life balance doesn't exist. And I know that's kind of controversial for a lot of people. So we're gonna watch the video and then we'll talk about it a little bit more. When I first saw that video, what stood out to me was that everything we're fighting for sort of unbalances your life, right? And I saw Michelle in the chat mention that, I don't think that the work-life balance exists. The idea treats them as if mutually exclusive, but I'm one person wherever I go, right? So yeah, we are social work professionals, but we're also like, for me, I'm also a daughter, I'm a fiance, I am a student, I am a travel agent, I like to travel, like I have all these other identities and all these other competing aspects of my life, right? So really, we're trying to strive for this sort of unattainable thing, right? So achieving a sense of equilibrium between our personal and professional lives may differ for a lot of us. And with work-life balance, the idea is sort of dividing things, right? So allocating your time and energy between the two, right? I prefer sort of work-life harmony or work-life integration, Because with work-life balance, there's sort of this goal of establishing like separation between your work and personal life and aiming to be really like thinking of like a pie chart, right? Dividing that down so it's perfectly shared. But on the other hand, work-life harmony or work-life integration emphasizes that there's synergy between them, right? It recognizes that the boundaries between the work and personal life can be blurred, right? And instead of sort of strict separation, it focuses on finding ways to align and harmonize the different areas of your life. So it's about seeking fulfillment and satisfaction in both areas of your life while simultaneously allowing them to coexist in a way that supports your overall well-being. So sometimes, you know, you may end up working more. Sometimes you may end up having personal things to deal with more. Like for instance, I broke my laptop 2 days ago, and that was not on my plans for this week, nor was not having hot water because the neighbor above me had a leak that affected our whole system. These are things we cannot control. So my personal life is seeking in every aspect of it right now. But because I believe in work-life harmony, I'm making it work. It doesn't affect me as much where I'm like, oh no, I can't get things done. I'm like, all right, there are things that I can shift and prioritize in different areas because that's where my focus needs to be right now. So when work-life balance, while work-life balance focuses on clear separation and allocation of your time, work-life harmony really acknowledges that there may be times when work demands spill into your personal life and vice versa, right? We have to find a way for sustainable integration of really what works well or best for us. And I think if anything from the years we spent in the pandemic, that was a great show of how work-life balance does not exactly exist, right? Our personal lives were seeping into our work lives and vice versa. We were working from home. For some people, they may have always been, but I had to set up like an office space because I didn't think about having that before as well. So let's get into some things that we can do. So the first one is about feelings. So there was a survey that Brene Brown did of like 77,000 people, over 5 years. And they found that the average person can only identify 3 emotions as they're actually feeling them. So that's happiness, sadness, and anger. Now, this feeling wheel was developed by Dr. Gloria Wilcox, and I like it because it can help us put words to emotions that can help care for our mental health. So the purpose of the feeling wheel is to help individuals identify and articulate their emotions more effectively. It's a great visual tool. It has a wide variety of emotions that I never really thought about, right? Remember when I first started, I was like, oh, okay, if I'm feeling peaceful, am I feeling content or thoughtful? Like perhaps I'm feeling pensive or relaxed. It really gives you more language to apply to your emotions. And it offers a more nuanced approach between just saying like, oh, I feel sad or I feel happy. Like, is that really what you're feeling at that moment? And it can help you articulate these feelings to other people. A great thing with it that I think is helpful for building your emotional intelligence and your own self-awareness. And for people who have children, this would maybe a great thing to help them also be able to talk about their emotions and feelings, right? So it helps support effective communication. It provides sort of a shared language for us to express and discuss our emotions. It can help foster empathy and understanding and connection. So overall, I think it's a really valuable tool in navigating and understanding the complex world of emotions, empowering us as individuals to better recognize and label our emotions and communicate our feelings for our own personal growth and self-care and for the betterment of our interpersonal relationships. So with understanding your emotions, how do you do that? Here are some tips that I think that are helpful, because this is a crucial aspect of our self-care, and it can help us identify and address our needs more effectively. So emotional intelligence, for instance, is our ability to recognize, understand, and manage our own emotions, and recognizing, understanding, and influencing the emotions of others. And this was really popularized by Daniel Goleman. He has an entire book about it and lots of information out there. Understanding oneself leads to successful understanding and leadership of others. So the first tip is to practice mindfulness and emotional regulation techniques, right? So taking time to be fully present and tuning to your emotions without judgment. Notice the different sensations that you feel. Maybe your heart is racing, maybe your hands feel clammy, maybe you're sweating. Like, what are you feeling in that moment that are arising within you? Mindfulness allows you to cultivate sort of a non-reactive awareness of your emotions, enabling you to observe and understand them more clearly. And learning emotional and regulation techniques and practicing those are great for regulating your emotions, because using like deep breathing exercises or muscle relaxation or guided imagery or grounding techniques can really help you hone in and think about what you're feeling in that moment. And it can also help you become calm or like get through that feeling at that moment. The other aspect is journaling, right? I think journaling is a great tip for you to do. If you don't journal, try journaling. Maybe you're more of like person like records thing. You can record like audio, you can record video, you can write things down, you can draw, color, whatever works for you, to really reflect and think about what your experiences, your thoughts and feelings are about, without censoring yourself or having anybody else's thoughts or opinions within there, to really reflect on how you're feeling in the moment, why you're feeling the way that you're feeling, what do you want to change about it, what perhaps you may want to do differently in a situation as well. Sorry, 1 second. I just noticed my laptop is dying. The other thing that you can do is reflect on your triggers and different patterns. So paying attention to different situations, people, or events that are happening, and understanding what triggers you, why it triggers you, noticing those patterns. And journaling is a great way to help you do that, because that can really provide valuable information about your emotional responses and help you develop strategies to manage them. Also, having self-compassion is a really big thing. Like, we're not going to do everything right every time, right? We are human. It's okay to make mistakes. So cultivating that relationship with yourself, treating yourself with the same kindness, understanding, and acceptance that you treat your clients with, or your peers, or your family members. Emotions can be really complex and challenging, and it's important for us to give ourselves grace and patience as we navigate them. We're not going to wake up tomorrow and be like, oh, I'm an expert. I can name every single emotion that I'm feeling in that moment, right? That's just not how it works. So be gentle with yourself and practice self-compassion during moments when you're experiencing some sort of emotional difficulty. And lastly, of course, seeking professional support. So if you're finding a challenge to understand your emotions on your own, consider seeking the support of a social worker or another mental health professional that can help you navigate this and help you with tools or provide guidance or techniques to help you understand your emotions more effectively. So remember that understanding your emotions is an ongoing process. It requires self-reflection, patience, and self-compassion. And by developing a deeper awareness of our own emotions, we can better identify our needs, address them more effectively, and engage in self-care practices that support our emotional well-being. Tip 2 is about boundaries. No is a complete sentence. That's very hard for me. This is something I have been working on for a really long time. Setting boundaries is really a vital aspect of our self-care. It helps with our health, provide healthy relationships, and for our own personal growth. It really helps us create a healthier sort of synergy within our life, right? It protects our well-being. It can foster more meaningful connections with others. And it helps to create a clear guideline or rule and limit on how we would like to be treated, right? So letting others know what is and what isn't okay or acceptable is important. It honors our needs and helps us feel safe and respected. Boundaries also help to avoid burnout and stress and anxiety. And setting boundaries really has lots of benefits, like preserving your energy and mental health, enhancing your self-care. It establishes clear expectations. It improves your communications and relationships, promotes your own personal growth, can help reduce stress. Like, I know before I started setting healthy boundaries, it's like, okay, someone will ask me to do something. I'm like, yeah, I'll do it. But what I've started to do now is take a step back and be like, let me get back to you, because it allows me to have space to think about, do I really have the capacity to do that? Like, it may sound nice in the moment, and maybe from someone that I really love and care about, and I want to show up for them, but I also need to take a step back and say, okay, is this fitting into my setting? So these are some ways around creating boundaries. So the first one is learning to say no. That's an essential skill in your boundary setting toolbox. It involves recognizing your limits and being able to decline requests or obligations that perhaps exceed your capacity and don't necessarily align with your priorities. It allows you to protect your time, your energy, and resources, and helps prevent burnout and resentment. I know I've said yes to things sometimes I really didn't want to say yes to, and then I'm like, oh, why did I sign up for that? Or why did I decide to do that? Right? So this is a good way for us to all practice learning to say no. I know it's not easy to say no, especially, for instance, in your professional lives. If you're at work, sometimes, it's hard to say no to your supervisor. There's power dynamics that exist within that. But speaking up for yourself and letting them know, okay, hey, this caseload is too much, or, oh, I already have all these different projects, and asking them which they would like you to prioritize is another way of saying no without just saying no, if you have to use that within certain settings. Using assertive language. So assertive communication is also a key aspect of boundary setting. It's important for you to express your thoughts and feelings and needs clearly and respectfully for you to establish your boundaries effectively. So phrases like, I feel, like I could say, like, I feel sad when you don't wash the dishes. Like, that's something you could say to your partner. Or, I need support from you right now. I need you to do this right now. Things like that. Assert your needs while maintaining open communication. And then you also want to safeguard your spaces. Really, we have to stop feeling guilty for saying no and stop feeling guilty for setting boundaries. And it starts with practice. So starting with something small, right? So thinking of like, all right, maybe I want to put a password on my phone, or I want to put a password on like my Netflix account, or whatever you want to do. It could involve designating certain quiet areas in your home or your workspace that are just for you, or setting aside alone time for self-care, maybe blocking an hour off on your calendar where you're like, nope, not responding to emails, I'm going to go for a walk. I deleted the Gmail app off my phone, all these different things. So you're establishing that routine within your everyday life. But really, setting boundaries is crucial for maintaining our overall well-being and preserving your time and energy, right? And establishing healthy relationships. And I hope these tips empower you to assertively communicate your needs, protect your personal space, and make choices that align with your values and priorities. Because setting boundaries really helps us to have healthier interactions, reduce our stress, and enhance our overall quality of life. And honestly, the only way to get better at setting boundaries is to do them and to practice it and keep doing it. The third, I know when you think back to the self-care models, this was mentioned about building your own supportive network, because really research has shown that there's tremendous benefits in having a network of supportive relationships. Those with robust networks tend to live healthier lives, longer lives, and really have overall better health and well-being. Friends and loved ones can help you be more resilient in times of stress, if there are setbacks or loss. They can also make good times even better. So thinking of your support system or network and how you'd build that and how you can tap into that, right? So a big thing here is being open to the idea of asking for help when you need it and accepting that help. I know a lot of times, for me especially, it can be hard to accept help from other people or speak up and ask for help, but we're human. It's okay, right? Tap into your network as well. You want to try new activities so that you can meet new people or introduce you to fresh faces that can provide new perspectives. So maybe you've always wanted to join a book club, right? Find a book club that you might want to join, and that's another network that you're building. Paying attention to your relationships. So maintaining your relationships, picking up the phone and calling someone, right? Just randomly out of the blue to check in on them, sending a text message, setting up time to video chat and just checking in, finding out what's going on with people. And of course, volunteering or joining professional organizations. There are lots of networks, different organizations out there that look for volunteers or support. These are all great ways to help build that supportive network. And really also practice self-care by getting out of the house or getting out of your work schedule and doing something else that you really enjoy. So some tips for building a supportive network. You want to identify your needs. So really think about the types of support you require in your life. Like at different life points will require different things. So perhaps you might need emotional support. Maybe you're considering career change, so you might need career guidance or any other specific areas that you could benefit from support or assistance. Understanding your needs can help you seek out individuals who can provide the support that you're looking for. So pay attention to those relationships and think about also who are the people that drain you and who are the people you're excited to see. if you have friends that every time they ask you to go out, you really don't want to go, you probably need to reassess whether they should be a part of your network at that time. You also want to seek out like-minded individuals. So as I mentioned, joining professional organizations or looking for individuals who have specific values that align with yours, attending networking events, engaging in online communities related to your field, right? These are great ways to lead to meaningful relationships in a supportive network. Coming back to campus during homecoming, right? And reconnecting, or coming to workshops like this and connecting with alumni in the chat as well. Diversify your network. So seek connections with people from diverse backgrounds, professions, and perspectives. This can help really broaden your range of insights and support. And embracing diversity in your network can expand your knowledge, can help you challenge any assumptions or biases you have, and promote inclusivity. Sticking with a homogenous group of people where it's sort of everybody agrees with everything that you're saying is not good overall. Like, you really should try to tap into different people. Like, I have friends that I know if I want somebody to agree with me, that I will go to. And I have friends that, hey, if they're going to want to challenge me in some way, those are the people that I interact with at that point in time. And of course, creating your own supportive network. So fostering an environment of trust and openness in your network, creating those spaces where individuals can share their challenges, seek feedback and advice among each other. Building your supportive network, though, requires effort and ongoing support, right? So you have to nurture those relationships by staying in touch, offering support when needing, and celebrating each other's achievements, and regularly checking in with your network. And of course, engaging in volunteering. So getting involved with some community service or volunteer work can really expand your network and also make a positive impact. It allows us to contribute to meaningful causes, but also connects you with other like-minded individuals who share your same passions. It can provide an opportunity to build relationships with people who are passionate about these causes and can offer support and camaraderie. So additionally, volunteering can provide a sense of fulfillment and purpose, which can enhance your overall well-being and strengthen your support network. Remember that if you're building your supportive network, it's going to take time and effort. It does not happen overnight. So be patient, be authentic, and proactive in cultivating your relationships, and surrounding yourself with a supportive network provides you access to valuable resources, receiving guidance, helps create a sense of belonging, all of which contribute to your overall well-being. Okay, the next tip is about taking active breaks, which is about getting up and getting away from your desk. I started this thing where so I set my meetings on my Google Calendar. If it's an hour meeting, it goes from let's say 10 a.m. to 10:50. So I have those 10-minute blocks to get up, walk around, maybe go grab some water, talk to somebody whose door is open, really just getting up and stepping away from the computer. So how do we take active breaks? So some tips of that. One, disconnect from technology and changing your environment. So if possible, go outside and get some fresh air, get a change of scenery, go out and be in nature. Even if it's a short time, it can be really calming and rejuvenating for you. And if going outside really isn't an option, just changing your surroundings, moving to a different room or area can provide sort of a refresh. The other is sort of moving your body. So doing some yoga or stretches. There are lots of YouTube videos out there that are free and accessible for little quick 5-10 minute stretches that you can do. It really helps get your blood flowing, increasing your energy levels. You can go take a brisk walk as well, or engage in a short exercise routine. Maybe you want to block out 30 minutes on your calendar and you want to do a quick workshop, YouTube workout as well. Or even just moving a few minutes can help really refresh your mind and body, even if it's just 5 minutes. We talked about volunteering with the last one, but this is also a great way to take active breaks. So it helps shift your focus and perspective because you're engaging in physical activity and fosters your mental and emotional well-being. So it allows you to redirect your attention away from work into a different kind of task. So it could be you want to organize some community events, or you want to assist with a volunteering project. You might want to assist at a food bank or things like that. And it allows you to give back for the greater good. And this helps you rejuvenate your mind and body, but also promotes a sense of fulfillment and purpose, right? Another piece is socializing or connecting with others. So Perhaps with your colleagues or your loved ones, you want to reach out, have a phone call, video chat, engage in a conversation, maybe go grab lunch. Social interactions can really help boost our mood and provide a sense of connection with others. And also engaging in creative activities. So whether you want to color, draw, paint, whatever that may be for you, listen to music, maybe play an instrument, or engage in another kind of hobby. This allows you to have this moment, to have this pleasurable activity that can help reduce stress and sort of recharge your mental health. So I really like coloring every so often, or like doodling. So sometimes I just do that mindlessly a little bit, just to like not think about all the things that are happening with work, or to give myself a break where I'm like, all right, I've been staring at this computer for really long. How can I shift my focus into something else? The fifth and final tip is about creating a self-care plan. So this is really effective if you create it before you're in crisis. So it's really your sort of fail-safe to fall back when you need support. So self-care can be lots of things. It can be talking about saying no, setting boundaries, asking for what you need, putting yourself first, taking a bubble bath. It's really whatever it works for you and what you would like to define as your self-care. And in terms of creating your self-care, it's important because this is really about prioritizing your well-being and maintaining healthy work-life harmony. So some tips for developing your self-care plan is the first, again, assessing your needs. We really cannot have a self-care plan if we don't know what we need. So we need to take some time and reflect on what aspects are we needing at that time, right? Consider areas of your life that perhaps may need more attention or support. Then you want to identify specific activities. So make a list of activities that perhaps bring you joy, relaxation, or rejuvenation. So whether you like exercise, or maybe you like going for walks, or maybe you like journaling, maybe you like gardening, maybe you like crocheting, whatever it is for you, like making a list of those things. And then the next is sort of prioritizing your self-care. So determine which activities are most important to you and how you're going to make them a priority in your schedule. This is sort of the hard part because we're like, oh no, but I got to do this, I got to do that. Thinking back to, okay, do you really have to do those things? Is that really a priority that you have at that moment? And allocating dedicated time for self-care regularly and treating it as a non-negotiable time for yourself. So don't schedule things over your self-care. If you have it, do it, like try to keep it consistent. That's really helpful with establishing a routine. Setting realistic goals. So starting with something small and achievable. Don't start with like, oh, if you don't do any self-care, don't be like, oh, I'm going to do like 5 hours of self-care every week. Start with maybe, okay, 10, 15 minutes, like something that is more realistic or attainable for you in that moment. Because breaking down larger goals into smaller steps makes them more manageable for everybody. You want to then start working to create a routine. So incorporate self-care in perhaps your daily or weekly routine. For me, I try to do something every day and then also like something bigger, like let's say on the weekend. So since I'm a doctoral student, I'm getting married, so I'm planning a wedding, I work full time, all these different things that add up. I've made it a boundary where my schoolwork, I don't do any on the weekend. So my Saturday and Sunday are mine to do with whatever I would like to. And that's a big boundary that I've had. What that means though is sometimes in the week I have longer days depending, but that was what I wanted to do for me. The next is sort of setting boundaries. So learning to say no to excessive demands or commitments that are going to drain your energy or time. Learning to protect your space and doing that without any guilt. Also seek support. So reaching out to friends or family or your support networks to hold you accountable and encourage you. So share your self-care goals with trusted people who can support and motivate you on your journey. So with my partner, I'm like, okay, I want to do this thing. And if I'm gonna like back out of it, he'll be like, no, we committed to this. We bought the tickets. We're gonna go, right? And then I'm like, all right, that's true. And then I usually end up enjoying it, or usually end up trying something that's different or out there without compromising, let's say, my self-care plans, because those were the plans that I made. So instead of going like, oh, I got to do this presentation or I got to do this thing, it's like, no, we're going to go do this. And I really appreciate that. And then also evaluating and adjusting. So regularly assessing the effectiveness of your self-care plan, reflect on what is working well, what you may need adjustments with. It's not a one size fits all thing where you make it today and it's going to last you forever. You are not the same person that you were in January now that you are in June. You've learned different things. Things have shifted for you. So your self-care plan should be shifting as you need it. Self-care is really a personal journey And of course, what works for one may not work for another. So someone may be like, oh, you don't do any schoolwork on the weekends? No, I would prefer to do my schoolwork on the weekends. And that's okay. Tailor your plan to your specific needs and preferences, not anybody else's, and be consistent in prioritizing your well-being. Of course, be flexible and adaptable as you move through this process. Self-care needs change over time. You change over time. Be open to new activities or adjusting your self-care plan as necessary to meet these evolving needs. You want to make sure to practice self-compassion, be kind, and let go of perfectionism. Perfectionism does not exist. Things are not meant to be perfect. That's just not how life works, right? Accept self-care as a continuous process and that it's okay to have setbacks and make adjustments along the way. I am not perfect with my self-care. Sometimes I definitely do like, oh wait, no, I like missed that 10-minute break or I missed my lunch hour because now I have this 12 o'clock meeting, right? So treat every day as a new day and try to reset and keep it going. A bonus tip with this is something that I'm practicing right now as a recovering multitasker, is this 5 projects rule. So the idea essentially from research is that our brains, like we lead to quicker burnout if we go over 5 projects, right? So for the 5 projects rule is about prioritizing the projects that are most important to you during a specific time frame, whether that's like a week, a month, a day, so that you can stay motivated to finish it and get better results. The rule is really no more than 5 projects. So it's based on decades of research, observation, and experiments that have shown that most people won't complete more than 5 projects per time scale. And how many projects we finish is more important than how many we start. We do ourselves no favors by committing to more projects than we'll be able to do. So the principle behind a 5 project rule is that by limiting the number of concurrent projects, we can allocate our time, resources, and attention more effectively. We can reduce multitasking and stop spreading ourselves so thin because we're able to concentrate more on these smaller tasks. And that leads to better quality outcomes and reduces the chances of burnout. It also recognizes that juggling too many projects simultaneously can lead to decreased productivity, increased stress levels, and a higher likelihood of missed deadlines or errors. So by focusing on these smaller projects, we can prioritize these tasks and be more efficient as we work through whatever we're going through, right? So, but it's important to note this isn't necessarily an absolute rule, depending on the nature of the projects, their complexity, or your capacities. It may be that you want to do 3 instead of 5, for instance. So some people may find that they can effectively handle more than 5 projects, while others may need to limit themselves to fewer. It's ultimately a guideline, right, to help you find this harmony and optimize your productivity and performance. So what does that look like in practice? So I took the liberty of making this little chart to kind of show how it's working for me for June, what I'm thinking about. So like my June project, of course, this presentation was a big part of June. I have a new staff person that I'm onboarding as well. I'm following up on wedding RSVPs. I have a summer program that I'm over this summer, and I'm also working on my doctorate in social work, so I'm starting the capstone IRB process. So those are sort of the big bucket things, right? This week, my focus was on reviewing this presentation, so I was prepared for today, conducting that new staff orientation, contacting the outstanding wedding guests because people forget to RSVP. I have a social work alumni board of governors meeting, and then I had to work on developing research projects for my capstone. And then today, for instance, like doing the presentation was my first thing. I have one meeting today, and then I'm going to text wedding guests to follow up with them. So this has really helped me think about, okay, really, what is my focus this week? What's my focus today? What's my focus for that month? And breaking it down. And if it doesn't fit within here, it's not a priority at that time, right? So it really forces you to pick what your priorities are in the moment. So remember that the key here is not to prioritize what's on your schedule, but to schedule your priorities. So think about what is important to you, what matters to you. I often say, okay, like for instance, with exercise, like exercising is not a priority for me right now. And if I say that and it doesn't feel good, I'm like, that's not true. Then I'm like, all right, what do I need to shift to make time for the things that matter? So this gets to our next poll question. What is something that you're going to commit to trying this week? Okay. So lots of different things for people who said other. Share in the chat some of the things that you're going to do. So some people are going to try the 5 projects rule. Some people are going to work on a self-care plan, learning to say no, committing this week to take a short walk every day. Yep. Journaling, understanding your emotions. And really that question is more so to prompt you to start thinking, all right, what am I going to do? How am I going to integrate some of the things that we talked about today, or anything that perhaps someone shared in the chat that works for you? No work during my vacation next week. Yes. When I take vacations, I try to leave my laptop at home and I turn off notifications for the email app, Microsoft Teams, any of those work related things, or sometimes I even delete the app, right? To make sure that you're setting that boundary. It's like, okay, no, I'm not going to check anything, not going to respond until I get back. I prioritized getting a pedicure and did a Tuesday time for me. Spiritual physical. Yep. I love getting my nails done. That's a big part of self-care for me. Like just going and get my nails done. It makes me feel better. It's relaxing, especially those massage chairs. Hearing more. Yep. Awesome. So the last bit of information I have before we open it up for questions is some resources, because I believe one, in sharing information, but also helping people start, right? Because it can be overwhelming to hear all these things, right? So it's like, okay, well, what do I do next? And I recognize that people learn differently. So there's a bunch of links in the presentation and will be shared with you as well as the recording. These are some websites that I found that have, to me, some really good things to get you started thinking about self-care or things that you can do. So if you wanted to take like a self-care assessment, if you wanted to learn more of the ABCs of self-care, of course, NASW has some self-care resources on their website as well. The next thing is books. So the Viral Justice book from Ruha Benjamin about how we grow the world we want is something that I'm reading right now that's really interesting to me. So thinking of like sort of like the activist perspective and how that promotes the self-care. There's also, if you're interested in hearing specifically from BIPOC authors or voices, there's a link there to a website that has a bunch of different books. But these are the different books that you may perhaps be interested in some way, if you're a person that likes to read. The next step is podcasts. So if you're a person that likes to listen to podcasts, here are some podcasts that perhaps can get you started. So there's a social work podcast, of course. There's the Balanced Black Girl, the Trauma Therapist Project, Unlocking Us with Brene Brown, Brown Girl Self-Care. And there are tons of other podcasts out there. Just pulled a couple to get you start thinking of like, oh, that's something that you can perhaps listen to on your way to work or on your walk, or whatever you're doing. I really like apps. So here are some apps that you can add to your daily life. If you're a person that likes technology, so calm.com, I use their like meditations, or they have like these sleep stories. So sometimes I have a hard time turning my mind off. And those are really great to help me get to sleep and relax. So those are great. There's Finch, which is a self-care pet. I just discovered that one that's supposed to support and promote your well-being. So those are some things that you can do. I also have worksheets that I've made at different points in my life around self-care that I've shared for you all to use. So like writing out personal love letter to yourself. There's like a daily mental detox challenge or a self-care challenge that you can do for 30 days. There's a gratitude journal. You can do things as well, or daily affirmations to get you started in that way if you are somebody that likes to do things. So my last poll question before we open it up for any questions that you all have that I may have missed is, what type of resources are you excited to check out? Awesome. So lots of people are excited to check out all of the above. We have some that shows books, podcasts, apps, worksheets. Awesome. So with that, I want to remind everyone to be good to yourself. Oops, I went a little bit fast. Be good to yourself. And of course, for the things I talked about, there are references in the slides if you wanted to read the articles yourself as well. Are there any questions that I can answer?
Yes. And holy smokes, Sade, you are amazing. I'm going to have to share the chat with you later because the amount of love you are getting in the chat is just incredible. Folks are saying this is one of the best self-care presentations that they've ever seen. So kudos to you. Really well done. All right, we do have a good amount of questions, and please feel free to continue sending them, folks. I will catch them as they come through. So the first one, how do we challenge organizations who don't provide a healthy work environment?
That is a big one. So for me, I try to change the culture wherever I go. So at my last job before this one, didn't necessarily have really boundaries. I was working as a consultant. So consultant, long hours and whatnot. Nope. I stuck to my 40-hour week. I took my vacation days. I would say to my coworkers, hey, like, let's go grab lunch or let's go sit outside, like encouraging that and speaking up for myself and sort of building it within the culture. So the supervisor now in my role, like I encourage my staff to take their vacation days, to use your sick time, to use your flex time. If like I see an email come through from one of them at like 10, 11 o'clock at night, and I notice, I'm like, why are you working so late? Like trying to establish and model those behaviors to help move the culture in the direction that I would like it to. Because honestly, we all live in times where, overworking is a thing. The more like burnt out or stressed you are, it's like a badge of honor. And I'm really trying to move away from that. So I would encourage you and your organizations to try bringing it up, making it sort of an agenda item on your meetings, talking to your supervisors, asking about what wellness resources are available at your organization. And if there are none, that's a problem, right? That should be more integrated, especially with the world that we're living within now.
Yeah.
So hopefully that's helpful.
It's a great answer. I love that you said how overworked you are is a badge of honor. We recently, for the team that I work on, we had a team retreat and we did the Enneagrams and talked about the Enneagrams. And I definitely resonate with that. Tend to feel that the more work I have, the more burnt out I am, the better I am. And I have learned the hard way that that is not true. You actually tend to work better if you're mentally better. So.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. This was another question, also sort of a suggestion. This person said, these should definitely be integrated into macro classes. How do we build just and equitable systems for staff? What would employment models look like that support these actions rather than making it an individual solution?
Yeah, definitely. That's a great thing to look at. I don't necessarily have the answer, but in thinking of like, okay, how can we take like things? Because honestly, most of the person is talking about you as an individual, right? And your own self-care practices. But how can we look at like organizations or communities or the structures that we have and how they promote or don't promote self-care? That's really also important. Because especially where unionizing, I saw that in the chat just pop up. That's a great way to get these things built in there. But when you look at the built environment and the communities that you're living in, are they even walkable, right? So can you even go walk around and take that active break outside?
Yeah.
Like these are factors or systems that are designed really, I think, to help us work more versus take care of ourselves. So I don't have the answer for that, but I definitely like to look into that.
Yeah,
that
something to play around with for sure. This is a tough one. How do you deal with an unsupportive supervisor?
Get a different job. Okay, no. That's not always possible. So I've had unsupportive supervisors in the past, and really building community with my coworkers or seeing who are sort of my allies or advocates within there. Because if your boss or supervisor doesn't model those things, they may not know it, right? So sometimes you have to be the change you want to see. You have to like manage up. It sucks, but sometimes that's part of what we have to do, and it can be kind of scary to do that. But just starting to have conversations or building it in, like, you should be having check-in meetings, or maybe building it in there, like adding like, oh, I want to talk about like work-life harmony. I want to talk about these things, these projects and the scopes. Perhaps the 5-project rule might be something you want to bring to the team as a suggestion, for instance. That's what I would do. But it's hard to change other people's
comment in here. It can feel scary to ask about self-care, culture, and work-life balance in a job interview. I agree. I would say even it can be scary to talk about it with maybe a current supervisor, because I think that relates back to what you were saying with how it's like a badge of honor. And I think to say, hey, I'm really overworked, I need some time. You're showing a vulnerability. Yeah,
and it's definitely, it takes practice. Like I started asking about it in my job job interviews, and you can ask about it, like not just saying, oh, like work life harmony or self-care, but like asking about the policies for vacation days. Do they have mental health days, right? What does that look like within the organization? How often do people take time off? Like find different ways to ask those questions, but they're still getting to the answers that you want if you're sort of worried about just naming it in that space. And I would also argue, I don't want to work for an organization that doesn't prioritize me and my well-being, to be honest, because I can't work well if I am not well myself.
Yeah, absolutely. For those that come from cultures that prioritize cohesiveness, which can be admirable, how do you bridge the cultural values with self-care boundaries?
Ooh. So I mentioned I grew up in Trinidad. My family does not respect my boundaries. It's a work in progress that I am working on, like setting and establishing boundaries with my parents and grandparents and like talking about it and naming it. Because it's like, well, no, it's like, okay, I'm like, I don't want to do this thing. I'm like, well, no, you gotta no. It's like standing true in it, but also being respectful. It's easier for me to set boundaries because I live in Michigan and they don't live here. Like none of my family lives near me. So that's much easier than if they were definitely here. But it's sort of practicing or modeling it a little bit. So I don't allow people to just pop up. And I've told people, I'm like, if you just pop up, I'm not going to open the door, even if I'm inside, because that's about respecting my space, right? And being invited into that. So it really is a challenge. I don't think I have like the solution because I'm still working on it myself. But if you figure it out, please let me know.
Oh, I did really actually like this question because I think it's so true. How do we prioritize volunteer opportunities and social activities when we already feel major burnout from work?
Yeah, so I would say before you even start to get to the volunteering and social activities part, looking and taking a step back at like, okay, what are the things that are on my plate? Are there things that I can shift to another time? Is there a team member that can perhaps help me? Is there a conversation that I need to have about what's on here? So like in April, my job shifted. I was doing like my old job, but also doing this new job where I'm running this summer program. And I was like, I can't do all of this, right? So I had to have a conversation with my supervisor about what are our priorities? What is most important to keep going? What can we put on the back burner? So I think that's a great thing to do, to think about and reflect, maybe pulling in the 5 projects rule of like, okay, these are the things that I can prioritize. Does this match what you all would like me to prioritize on? If not, you can adjust things, but I'm not going above this and working on setting those boundaries.
Yeah, that's a really good tip. Okay, then this one is a pretty easy question, I would think. Would you be willing to give this presentation to other social work groups? My county school social workers would really benefit from this.
Sure, definitely. Send me an email and you can talk about it. I love talking about self-care. I love talking about wellness, all of these things, because I think we don't talk about it enough.
Yeah.
And I spent quite a bit of time researching on it. So if I could give it a couple more times, I would not mind.
Yeah. Well, that was the last question. I don't know, Jan, if you have any questions, or folks, if you want to continue to send us questions, we do have 12 minutes left. So if anybody wants to ask any other questions, I would say this was a really good comment. Volunteering is easier when you look forward to it versus feeling like you should do it. And I feel like that's really important when it comes to self-care, is picking out things that you actually want to do.
Exactly. Don't just do it because it's a list of things of like, oh, well, people say like, you should take a bubble bath or you should do something. If those are not things that you enjoy, like I don't like running, that will never be my self-care, right? That will not be what I choose to do. And that's okay. But there are other people who love running. Like my partner loves going for a run. I never go. That's their thing. In their time. So finding those things that you enjoy is really important, or else it's just going to come another chore, another thing to check off on the list. And that's really not what we want it to be.
Yeah. Awesome.
Well, thank you, Sade, and good luck with your wedding. Enjoy that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's coming in September. Can't wait.
I'm just looking through the chat. Where did that one go? Cindy, as a new social worker starting my first job next week, this presentation is just what I needed. Congratulations, Cindy.
Congratulations. Definitely. First thing to do on your calendar that I've done, block off your lunch hour. and don't let people schedule over it. Like set your calendar up how you would like to. I don't like 8 a.m. meetings, so I also have that early morning time blocked off too, where people can't schedule things there. That's just not, yeah, they can schedule between like 10 and 1 and 10 to 12 and 1 to like 4.
Yeah, that's a really good tip. I have done that. I've learned through the pandemic that I work better after 9 a.m. And so I'm happy to do meetings after 9 a.m. But things before that, I'm just not ready yet, and that's okay. We did actually get 2 more questions.
Okay.
Do you have tips on emergency self-care?
Oh, emergency self-care. So for me, that's when I try to use like those apps that I mentioned, like calm.com, things like that, or like emotional regulation techniques. So like deep breathing or counting. So those are things that I do like in the moment if I'm really stressed and like just I don't know what to do. There's too many things that are happening. Those are things that I practice, but it's really figuring out what is that one thing for you. Like sometimes for me, that involves putting on Netflix or a show on Hulu and just mindlessly watching for a couple hours and neglecting whatever other responsibilities I have because it's like it can get done tomorrow. And I think that's something we need to remember. Things don't have, like, yes, there are certain things that are deadlines, but everything doesn't have to be done. It's okay if there are dishes that are left. It's okay if you didn't get to do laundry at that time. It's okay. Things will get done. They don't all have to get done in the same day. So that's stuff that I would do.
That's a great reminder. I often remind myself that I'm fortunate that I don't work in a profession where someone is going to die if I don't get my job done. And so if something needs to go on to the next day, it will be okay. The other question, is your dissertation research related to this topic or something totally different?
Yeah, you would think it would be, right? But it's so I'm getting a doctorate in social work, and I have been like, okay, I just need to do what I need to do to get to graduation. So for my project for that, I'm evaluating. So part of my role in the School of Public Health is we do these public health in action courses where I teach a class and then we take students to work on projects with community partners. So we've had a partnership in Grenada for the last since 2012, but it's never been evaluated. So I'm doing an evaluation from the perspective of the community partners. So I'm doing some key informant interviews to hear what's working, what's not working, what the impact has been in doing that for my project. The self-care is my passion, and I feel like if I did it for my dissertation, I would not like it as much. So that's what I'm doing for that capstone project.
Awesome. All right. Oh, this is a really nice comment. Your energy and affect are very attractive and powerful, positive aspects of your presentation. Thanks, and keep up the good work.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And I liked Bill Vanderbilt, glass balls versus rubber balls.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Exactly. Remember, if you don't remember anything that I said, remember to at least prioritize the things that matter to you.
Yeah.
Schedule your priorities. Don't go do it the other way around. At least remember that as you think about your self-care journey.
Absolutely.
And of course, feel free to email me if you have any questions because you'll have my email address with the slides. And best of luck to everyone on your self-care journeys, whether you're starting it, re-energizing it, figuring it out. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, any final thoughts from Jan or Sade before I close things out?
No, I think this was really great, and I really appreciate it, Sade. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity.
Yeah, no, Sade, it was so exciting to work with you on this, and amazing presentation, amazing tips, definitely some things that I'm going to take away. My team was all Google chatting during this, talking about how great you are and some things that we're going to take away. So on another note, thank you everyone. Our next session is at 2:00. So I will see you all then if you're going to be joining us. And you, as always, you can find all of those webinar links on the conference webpage. That is also where you will be able to access all of the slides and resources and recordings. I just ask that you're a little patient and give us a few days to get all of that stuff organized and put up on the webpage. And as always, if you have questions regarding your continuing education hours, please contact the Office of Continuing Education. That is not me. I know it is very confusing, but their email address is up on the screen. So please do contact them if you have any questions. Have a wonderful rest of your afternoon, and I will see you all at 2:00.
Thanks. Bye.